Hello, everybody. It's your pal Victoria. So, last week, because, I've been slacking on making videos, um, went to my prosthetic appointment, got to try on the test leg that I'll be getting a more permanent model next week after. And I got to stand up and walk and all that. So that was really nice. Although my blood pressure decided to add a little element of danger into it because the minute I stood up, it's like, hey, everything went tick, till. Stupid blood pressure issues. Because that's what got me into this mess. But so I've pretty much been chilling out here in bed in my home, and I have made it. I'm like on day 10, day 11 of being home. So this is the longest I've been home consecutively since the night this happened, and all that. So I'm watching a bunch of movies and writing letters, and thanks to my lovely cousin who hooked me up with some coloring books off my Amazon wish list and some primo colored pencils. I have been coloring as much as my achy arthritic hands will allow me, and being mobbed by my kitty cats because, hey, mommy's home. So I have promised the longer version of what all happened to get me here, and because the video that I initially posted week before last about this was pretty much the Cliff Notes version. So get you a little drink and all that good stuff, and buckle up, babies, because this is going to be a longer one. So this is why you need to be careful if you think you're having an issue with your blood pressure, because the night this all started for me, I had been feeling off kilter pretty much all day, and I just chalked it up to my fibromyalgia because, I'd been pretty much taking care of my dad every day, daily, 24/7 for the past several years, and he was in the hospital. So I wasn't having to, constantly wake up every couple hours because I would hear something and all that. Because trust me, taking care of an 85-year-old dad is, like taking care of an insomniac toddler, and especially when they have dementia and all that, and they get their circadian rhythms mixed up, and it's like, oh, let's go to bed at 6, let's wake up at 3. So the night before, I had gotten the first, just crawl into bed and pass out full night's sleep for the first time in I don't know how long. And the next day, because I'm unaccustomed to being able to sleep for that long, I felt kind of off. So I was just kind of taking it easy. We went out, did some errands and stuff, because my husband had the day off. So, and it was about 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I got up. You have to get up sometimes in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. No biggie. Went and did that. I had also thought, I'll get some water because I'm thirsty. Because I didn't know that my diabetes had decided to come back. So, but there again, I'm always sucking down water. So that wasn't anything new. And when I stood up, I started feeling kind of lightheaded, and I was like, screw the water. If I'm really that thirsty, I'll get it later. I still had some water in my cup. I'm just going back to bed. I didn't make it inside the bedroom doorway, and the hallway is very short and very narrow. And the last thing I remember is like, oh, and then the next thing I know, I'm looking up at the hallway ceiling at the attic, pull-down attic steps with our dog all in my face, like, hey, Mama, what you doing? What are you doing here? My poor sweet little husband. He's like, you okay? I said, I think. He's like, you want your cane? And I kind of started wiggling around. I was like, I don't think that's going to help. And he's like, why? And I was like, I don't know. I just feel off. So he got up, and we turned on some light. And now, because I have some mobility issues, because I have paraneuropathy, thanks to years of not being a treated diabetic, because I now know that I was complaining of classic diabetic symptoms, and the doctor that I had at the time was more interested in other aspects of my life than, legitimate complaints of being constantly thirsty, getting up 3 and 4 times a night to go to the bathroom, and, all that. So, yeah. That's a whole nother video. So, when I had bariatric surgery years ago, it cured me of the diabetes. But where I had been taking care of Dad for so long and neglecting my own health and putting him first rather than my own health, it came back on me and I didn't realize. But that's all right. I'm getting it under control now. And so when I had sat up and my legs were in the bedroom, but the rest of me was out in the hallway. So just to make sure nothing was sprained, I put my hands underneath my one leg and pulled it closer to me and did the same thing with my left leg. Now my left ankle is the one that broke. And when I did that, this is one time that diabetic nerve damage really worked in my favor. My ankle was like this, just flopping at the end of my leg, which really kind of freaked me out. And I'm prone to kind of being panicky anyway. But thankfully, I was just like, oh shit, this is not good. Great. So, because I'm 48 years old, in my mind, having broken this wrist twice and the other one once was more than enough. But no, now I have a broken ankle. So I tell my husband, honey, my ankle's broken. He's like, oh shit. And I was like, yeah, if you want to call 911 for me, or do you want me to call? He said, I'll let you call. And I said, well, hand me my phone and go unlock the door. And so I called 911. And EMTs show up, and the first 2 guys, because I had to call more, because there again, keep in mind, hallway is narrow, and I pretty much was taking up all the space. They got there and leaned up against the door and poked his head around, and so, Mrs. Griffin, what makes you think your ankle's broken? I'll look up at him. I reach forward and put my hands under my knee and lift my leg, and my foot proceeds to go flop. The guy with him turned about as green as my frog here. I'm making a video. And all that. And he's like, yeah, that's broke. And I'm still so proud of myself because I did not give in to my 12-year-old self that's a snarky little Gen Xer that I am and go, no shit, Sherlock. So I was like, yeah, it's broken. And I was like, yeah. So immediately they both try to get on either side of me, which is next to impossible because of the narrowness of the hallway, and start trying to help me stand up. I'm like, dude, this is not going to work. And by this point, the dog is having a fit because I'm yelping. The dog's like, oh my God, you hurt my mom. I'm going to kill you. And he's a Yorkie. I mean, he's a larger Yorkie. I mean, my boy's a chunky butt. So finally I convinced him to please stop trying to help me. Let me scoot back into the living room under my own power so they can, have, one on either side of me, and it would be easier on everybody. And they're like, okay. So in the meantime, they're asking me questions, I'm answering them. They're like, well, what type of medications do you take? Because, most people would be screaming in pain. I was like, I've got diabetic nerve damage. I don't have any, almost no feeling below the knees, which is why I no longer drive. And they're like, wow, it's like, man, whatever medications you're on. I'm like, diabetic nerve damage, almost no feeling. This is not drug related. What medicines I take are minimal. Because otherwise, I don't want to turn into a drugged out zombie, and when the pain gets really bad, and they can start me on something simple that will potentially work, I have a greater chance. This is what happens because I was sick a lot as a kid. I hate taking medicine. I don't want to take as little as possible. So I finally get out in the living room, and they get me up. They get me out of Gertie. They get me out to the ambulance. And the guy who's sitting back in the ambulance with me decides to test my blood sugar because I explained to him, I had bariatric surgery years ago. Now, I'm still not at goal weight, but that's fine. I've got other health problems that still, even with bariatric surgery, make it hard for me to lose weight. I am almost at goal. There's that. So he's asking me, he's like, and I told him I had been diabetic at one time, but after the surgery, I was no longer diabetic. So he's like, well, I'm going to check your blood sugar anyway, just to be on the safe side. Well, it was 600. Joy. So back on insulin for me. Well, they don't tell you if you fall and all that, don't be alarmed even if you are diabetic, because something like that's traumatic, can shoot your sugar up with a quickness. So, I'm watching a movie in the background. I forgot to mute it. But, so they get me to the ER, and the doctor comes into the little room they got me in, and he's like, can you lift your leg? And I just lift my leg up. It's like, is that good enough? He's like, yeah, that's real good. And he's like, what's going on with you? Because I'm laying there cracking jokes with the nurses and stuff. No reason to be a sour puss even in the middle of the night. I'm in pain. Making other people laugh distracts me. And I tell him, diabetic nerve pain. He's like, oh, that's why. I go, why? He's like, anybody else that I've ever dealt with who's had this type of injury from a fall or what have you, they are screaming their heads off in pain. You're laying there being jovial, cracking jokes, making the nurse, me and everybody else around here laugh, I was like, so you're telling me for once diabetic neuropathy, paraneuropathy is a good thing? He's like, yeah. I was like, good to know. So by that point, the nurse who had been helping take care of me, taking me back and forth to X-rays and MRIs and what have you, has told me, I'm keeping you. And all that. So I had surgery, and that went well. They put a bunch of hardware in my ankle, and I stayed there at the hospital for several days and had some very brief physical therapy, even though I kept telling them, they were like, oh, just don't put weight on your foot. Oh, look how well you stood up. And I'm like, are you in any pain? I was like, well, my back hurts, but I can't really feel anything below my knees anyway. So I was already concerned about being just sent home willy-nilly. I was like, well, they're the ones that went to med school. And apparently I'm following everything that they're telling me to do correctly. Otherwise, they wouldn't be sending me home. Well, I was back the following weekend. I wasn't even home a full week. I think that time it was like 3 days. And, my ankle had rebroken. I had a bone splinter. The hardware was mangled, and I had an infection. So, more time in the hospital. More surgeries. Because they had to remove all the hardware, pump me up full of antibiotics and all this good stuff, remove the bone splinter and all this good stuff, and then they put more hardware back in me and sent me to rehab. Now, I stayed in rehab for a good little bit. February, March, April. I got out in April. I went in February. And so I was there close to full 3 months. And when I came home, I was able to walk. I had on a boot that came up to my knee and all that. That was no problem. First 2 days I was home, I was fine. The third day, I wasn't feeling great. Spent most of the day in bed. That night, I got worse. And I struggled for hours just to get up because I was so damn weak. I couldn't sit up. And I needed to go to the bathroom. And I was determined to go under my own power. And I figured I was just having a really bad fibro flare, and my blood pressure was acting up and all that. So after struggling to get up for hours, I finally managed to get up, and I managed to get into the bathroom. But then I could not get up. I couldn't even raise my arms. Told my husband, hand me my phone. I called 911. They came, had to take the bathroom door off. And I was so weak, I couldn't help them. And this house is old. The bathroom is small. However, because of a plumbing issue several years before, my husband had taken out the sink and the vanity that my mother had in the bathroom years ago when we had to redo the bathroom, because the floor was just there was no floor under the tub. So we had to replace everything, do new plumbing and all that. But thanks to a plumbing issue, we had to replace the sink and make it higher. And so, thankfully, without that huge vanity in there, that gave us a little bit of space. And finally, they were able to get a transport chair and get me slid over from the toilet to the transport chair, out to the ambulance, and from the transport chair onto a gurney and back to the hospital I went, where they tell me I have a systemic MRSA infection. I was septic. And they started pumping me full of antibiotics and medicines and all that, and I mean, I was just out of it. Alan had shortly after this second surgery, before I went to rehab, the first time had found out he had COVID, so he couldn't even come see me and all that. So the doctor came in, and they hadn't even moved me upstairs yet, and told me what was going on, that I had MRSA, that I had two choices. I could either try to fight the MRSA infection, and I could still potentially die, or they could amputate. And they did not know how much they would have to amputate, because they needed to take above the field of infection. And thankfully, it was only mid-shin. It could have been up to my hip. So, for me, it was a no-brainer. I have a very quiet little life. It's very boring. I mean, yeah, sometimes we have some drama, thanks to some family members and all that, But, it's quiet. I like it. I'm attached to my husband and my family. So, I made the decision to let go with a foot and hope for the best regarding the amputation, that I would still have at least my knee, and thankfully I do, and all that. So that is how I came to be an amputee. There are worse things in life. I did have a couple of meltdown moments initially there, first week after surgery, but I had to throw a physical therapist out of my room because he was just an ass, for lack of a better term, because he comes in and he's Oh, well, tell me how you did this. And, well, I told him. I fainted, I fell, broke the ankle. This happened, this happened, this happened. I came in again because I was so horribly sick, and I had a systemic MRSA infection, and it was either lose the foot or potentially die. Oh, well, no, just tell me what happened. Now, I have anger issues as it is. I ended up screaming at him and telling him that he needs to clean the shit out of his ears and get that beep up out of my room. He was like, oh, well, just, are you cold? And then he proceeds to stand there and tell me, are you cold? Would you like a blanket? Do you need something to drink? And I just looked at him and said, I need you to get out of here. And I mean... and I was yelling, a nurse comes running in, I was like, anybody but that little prick. I will work with every other physical therapist in this hospital but him. So, and as a patient, you have that right. You can tell them you don't want certain doctors in your room. If you don't want to take medication, you can do that. Although I'm pretty compliant, I want to go home. I will pretty much do everything they tell me to. That is the first time I have ever showed my ass to a medical professional, other than breaking it down to one doctor I had about what happens if you die as a super morbidly obese person, and because he was not aware and all that. So I have been home now a record 10 days, or this is day 11. So I have been coloring and reading and writing some letters, and this is making my second YouTube posting regarding the situation. And I have been watching TikTok videos, also as how I affectionately call it, short attention span theater, and all that. So, have a good one, folks. I'll catch you later. Bye-bye.